Stanford at Oregon. Marco, what should bettors be looking at?
People got to look at Oregon. 57 points a game they're averaging, but they haven't played a tough schedule at all. Last week was their toughest game, and Arizona State racked up 597 yards.
500, that's a big number.
And when you consider they turned the ball over 7 times, it's an even bigger. Arizona State turned it over 7 times.
So you got Oregon, in your opinions, played one tough game. They gave up almost 600 yards, benefited from 7 turnovers, which makes you a little negative on their standing relative to public perception.
Absolutely. But then on the flip side, to Stanford, they're in a huge negative scheduling spot. They played a big game, which it's an out-of-conference game, but it is a rivalry game because they play them every year. They went to South Bend last week and beat Notre Dame. And I know Notre Dame's down, but it's still
big game.
It's still Notre Dame.
The line opened up under a field goal in that game. That was a competitive game, big game. Agreed.
And it's the game that the country as a whole, public, a lot of people haven't gotten to see Stanford play yet. That was the first time last week that they saw Stanford on TV. And if that's the first time you sat down and saw them, you got to walk away and be pretty impressed. But remember,
they're more physical than in years past too, and that's
they've always been a finesse team, but this year they are becoming a more physical team. And I think that goes to the coaching, and I think it's a changing of the guard in the Pac-10. That's been one of the negatives to the Pac-10 is that they're all offense and no defense. And if you can get a team that's got a good offense and's got a little bit of punch and fight in them, it's going to be a different style.
All right, so you're making a good point. Is there's the recency effect, as it's called, as in the things we see in the recent past are more meaningful to us than things from further back. Stanford in a big national TV game looks really good against Notre Dame. Oregon not so good, like you said, with the turnovers and the yards they gave up. This line opened up Oregon at home at 4.5 and is up to 7. All sharp action, because again, 90+% of action pre-game day is typically sharp. This is a surprise move to me. You're going up to the key number of 7. What do you make of this move?
Well, I think one of the things, and I don't know if you'll agree with this statement, but I think one of the toughest home fields in all of college football, next to Boise State in that goofy blue turf, is Oregon. They get loud up there. It's a tough place to go.
But the odds maker knew that when he opened the line. If you're telling me why is Oregon favored by X, whatever it is, part of that's going to be the home field. Agreed. My question is, the home field hasn't changed since Sunday night when they put out the line. The sharps are heavy on Oregon to the point of, again, now remember, there's always the question is when the sharps are heavy on a team, is it a true position or are they setting up for a buyback? Usually the buyback is about getting ahead of a public move. I don't think after Stanford's performance on national TV against Notre Dame, the public's going to be anxious to go against them, though I don't think they're anxious to go against Oregon either. The public loves high-flying offenses. So if you would say the public, the marquee-ness, as I like to call it, the marquee factor is equal between these teams, this line move, you got to take it seriously.
You do. The limelight's been on Oregon all year. Last week was, I like to use the phrase, legitimizer for Stanford. The stock now is at its highest level on Stanford.
And the line's moved 3 points.
Right.
Or,
so
or
that's
2.5 points,
significant.
up to 7.
From a handicapping standpoint, I think this game comes down to which team. They both got explosive offenses. There's no question about that. But I think the key is the team that runs the ball better is going to be the team that's going to come out of here and win this game. And looking at the numbers, to me, that is the Oregon ball club. They run the ball better. But with this line,
touchdown favorite, you better do something better.
With the line sitting at 7 right now, I really don't see any value in this game. I have Oregon winning by 7 is what my numbers have.
So give us your official projection.
37-30 is what I have it. It will be, a typical shootout in the Pac-10. I have Oregon winning it by 7. I just don't see a lot of value.
Okay, so a couple closing comments. One, you talk about scheduling spot, back-to-back road games for Stanford too, and these are college kids, and across to South Bend is a trip. Number 2, Oregon at home, though they've had weak competition at home, the Arizona State game was on the road, they've outscored their opponent 141-0.
Can't get much better than that.
Can't get better than that. I actually have a lean towards the over. Now, usually this goes against my whole concept of you want to fade what's obvious. But I tell you, one thing I've noticed after years and years and years is when you have two really good teams and two really good offenses, the games, you always want to go under. But what ends up happening, because you think the value's there, at least I do, what ends up happening, the game takes on a culture of scoring. That it really, if you think about it, if you're playing a team where if you get down 14-0, the game's over, you're going to if you're down 7-0, the team's in the red zone, you're going to be thinking this is life or death. Mm-hmm. In this, if you're down 14-0, 17-3, it's a couple of possessions. And I think with two such high-scoring teams, there can often be a culture of scoring, and I wouldn't be surprised if this game had that. The ATS profile backs that up. Is as a home favorite, Oregon is over 10, under 2, and pushed 1. So 10, 2, and 1 towards the over as a home favorite. As a road dog, Stanford is 9, 1, and 1 towards the over. So both profiles are towards the over. You got a high-scoring team where there might be a culture of scoring here. I have a lean towards the over. Any closing thoughts?
Can't disagree with you. I'll give one note to our listeners that not for this week, but you know how we always talk and we want to teach and learn. If Stanford does come out of here somehow and gets a win, really Stanford, I think, win or lose, will be in a negative in their next game. If they win, you're coming off back-to-back road wins, high-profile Notre Dame and Oregon. But if you lose, there's so much hoopla to this one particular ball game because basically they're saying this is the Pac-10 title here, that if they lose, like you always say, one of those goals maybe, you could have a flat spot, a letdown, that hangover effect.
Good stuff. Now it's your turn to continue the conversation in the comments section. And next up, we're moving to NFL betting previews.